Hello everyone, and welcome back to Anime Dreams. Today, we're diving into a fascinating what-if scenario that reimagines the world of Naruto. What if Naruko, Naruto's female counterpart, had been raised not by chance or circumstance, but directly under the guidance of Jiraiya, the legendary Toad Sage? How would her upbringing, abilities, and even her personality be shaped under his influence? Before we begin, a quick disclaimer: this video is created purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage used here. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, let's get started. The birth of Naruko. The village of Konohagakure was quiet, not the usual gentle stillness of early morning, but the hush of a community reflecting on a great sacrifice. The nine-tailed fox spirit had been sealed away at last, but in doing so, their cherished fourth Hokage had given his life to protect everyone. The people grieved, supporting one another through the sorrow, while within the tall Hokage tower, a single room still glowed with light. Inside, candles flickered softly around the office. Four respected figures stood together in solemn silence. At the window was the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, gazing down at the village he once again led. Behind him were Hiashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan, Kakashi Hatake, once the fourth Hokage's pupil, and the wandering sage Jiraiya, Minato's mentor and friend. On the table rested a small child, an infant girl, newborn, and now without parents. Her tiny breaths were calm, unaware of the heavy discussion surrounding her. The atmosphere in the room carried both grief and responsibility. Hiruzen, often called the professor for his wisdom, drew a slow breath, the smoke from his pipe curling into the air. His thoughts were heavy as he finally spoke. Minato has sealed the nine tails within his daughter. He believed she would one day be seen as a hero who carries this burden for the sake of our home. The others nodded, for they already knew. But the Hokage's voice softened. The villagers, however, are lost in their grief. They do not see her as a hero yet. They fear the spirit inside her. Hyashi's eyes lowered, sorrow lingering in his expression. His clan had suffered greatly during the attack, and his pain weighed heavily on him. Quietly, he asked, "Can we truly be certain this choice was right?" Kakashi turned, surprised by the words. "Hiashi, she is only a child. Would you condemn her for something beyond her control? She is Minato's daughter. At the very least, she deserves a chance to live freely." The third Hokage nodded in agreement, though he understood Hyashi's fears. Minato believed in this village. He believed in her. We must now decide how best to protect her and guide her. The men considered the child, her soft blue eyes glimmering with innocence, and the spiral seal marking her small belly. Hiashi shook his head. If we allow her to grow without protection, the fox's power may one day bring danger again. She must be safeguarded. Kakashi, though young, spoke with determination. Perhaps, but she has done no wrong. Let her grow. If the time comes when safeguards are needed, then we can act. For now, she deserves a normal childhood. Jiraiya, leaning against the wall, closed his eyes. He had only just returned to the village when everything changed. At first, he resisted the thought, but as silence filled the room, he finally sighed. Minato asked me to look after her. I travel often, but maybe it would be better if I became part of her life. Otherwise, her path may be lonely. The third Hokage turned, studying his old pupil. Jiraiya, you must be certain. This is not a small task. Jiraiya chuckled softly, though there was warmth in his tone. I suppose raising Naruko wouldn't be the hardest mission I've taken on. Besides, Minato believed in her future. I won't let that hope fade. Kakashi and Hiashi exchanged glances, both surprised but somewhat relieved. At least Naruko would not be left without guidance. Jiraiya stepped forward and carefully lifted the small girl into his arms. She looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. For a moment, even Jiraiya, known for his wandering spirit, felt the weight of responsibility settle gently in his heart. "Well then, Naruko," he said softly, "looks like you and I are going to be spending some time together." The third Hokage smiled faintly, watching the little girl sigh contentedly in the sage's arms. Though her path would not be easy, Naruko was not alone. She had been entrusted to those who would guard her, guide her, and ensure that one day, she could shine as brightly as her parents once had. The following morning, the sun rose warmly over Konoha, its golden light spilling across the rooftops. The village was alive with activity as the people worked together to restore what had been damaged during the recent demon attack. While the tasks ahead were challenging, there was a shared feeling of hopefulness in the air. The villagers had endured much, yet they stood together, cherishing the peace they now enjoyed. At the northern gate of the village, Jiraiya made his way past the crowds. Many villagers waved as he passed, their farewells carrying both gratitude and encouragement. Securely fastened to his back was the great toad summoning contract scroll, and nestled beside it was little Naruko, dozing contentedly. From a distance, the third Hokage observed with thoughtful eyes. He understood that Naruko's journey would not always be easy. Jiraiya was a remarkable shinobi with many talents, though nurturing a child was not his strongest skill. Still, the Hokage's smile softened as he felt the presence of the two departing travelers. With Jiraiya watching over her, Naruko would be safe, and in time, the village would be able to heal without the lingering shadow of the recent attack. As Jiraiya continued on his path, he spotted Kakashi nearby and beckoned him over. "Kakashi, I've got something special for you," Jiraiya said with a grin. "It's my very first novel. I'm certain you'll enjoy it. One day, I'll be a renowned author, and my stories will inspire the world." Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the older ninja's enthusiasm but accepted the book with polite curiosity. Jiraiya let out a hearty laugh, wished him well, and resumed his journey. Meanwhile, little Naruko seemed fascinated by the oversized scroll on Jiraiya's back, her small hands reaching for it whenever it swayed with his steps. Jiraiya chuckled softly. "You'll come to understand the secrets of the toads soon enough, Naruko," he said kindly. "For now, consider it the best babysitter you could have." A few months later, Jiraiya wasn't entirely sure what had come over him when he decided to take this little one along on his travels. At times, he found himself second-guessing the choice, especially during the long nights when the child seemed endlessly restless. Naruko cried, napped, giggled, and cried again with remarkable consistency. No matter what Jiraiya tried, nothing seemed to calm her for long. It was nearly 3 in the morning, and Jiraiya hadn't enjoyed a full night's sleep in weeks. They had been journeying for several months, and Naruko had actually been fairly calm along the forest roads. The gentle sway of trees, the whisper of wind, and the hum of insects seemed to amuse her. But once they reached the border of the Earth Country, everything changed. Jiraiya had been looking forward to spending a little time on his research, but Naruko had other plans. At first, when Naruko cried in the marketplace, it actually worked in Jiraiya's favor. People, especially kind-hearted young women, came rushing over to coo at the baby. Flashback. "Oh, she's adorable," squealed one of the girls. "Is she your granddaughter? Look at those sweet cheeks," another added, reaching out to tickle Naruko. Jiraiya smiled proudly, doing his best to look responsible. "Yes, she's very special to me. She lost her parents in a tragic accident, so I'm looking after her." The group of girls admired Naruko warmly, but Naruko seemed to sense Jiraiya's sly grin and suddenly let out a loud wail. The giggles quickly turned into concerned expressions as the girls tried and failed to soothe her. Before long, they gave up, leaving Jiraiya standing there with a still crying Naruko in his arms. End flashback. Back at their small inn, Jiraiya sighed heavily as Naruko continued fussing. He rocked her gently, trying to think of something new. That's when his eyes fell on the toad summoning scroll resting in the corner of the room. A sudden idea sparked in his mind. Placing Naruko safely on the bed, he opened the scroll and pressed his palm against it. A puff of smoke appeared, and 2 elderly toads materialized before him. One wore a nightcap and had a long, snowy beard, while the other wore a bonnet with a matching nightgown. "Pa, the little one's awake again," the bonneted toad mumbled sleepily. "It's your turn, Ma," the bearded one replied. Both of them froze a moment later, realizing they were nowhere near their mountain home. "Jiraiya boy," Pa croaked, "what's going on, and what's that racket?" Before Jiraiya could explain, Naruko began crawling toward the edge of the bed. Luckily, Ma sprang forward just in time to scoop her up, holding her with surprising ease. "Goodness gracious," Ma exclaimed, rocking Naruko gently. "You need to take better care of this child." Jiraiya scratched his head awkwardly. "That's actually why I called you. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing." Ma inspected the bottle and formula on the table, shaking her head. "You've been mixing this all wrong. No wonder she's upset. Powdered formula needs proper water. And rice balls? Really, Jiraiya boy?" Pa let out a grumble. "We're sages, not babysitters. But I suppose we can guide you a little. Raising a child is no small task." Ma prepared the bottle properly, and Naruko's cries quickly turned into quiet, happy sounds as she drank. Jiraiya's shoulders sagged with relief. "That's the first time she's been calm all night," he admitted. "I'd nearly forgotten what peace and quiet felt like." The elder toads exchanged a knowing glance. Ma smiled softly as she held Naruko, while Pa folded his arms but relented. Fine. We'll help teach you the basics. But don't summon us at 3 in the morning unless it's truly important. Dash. The days that followed turned into lessons Jiraiya hadn't expected. Instead of training in advanced jutsu, the Toad sages instructed him in how to warm bottles, soothe crying, and care for an infant properly. Naruko, meanwhile, grew far more comfortable in Jiraiya's care, though she never seemed to approve of his attempts at research. By the time the sages returned to Mount Myobakuzen, Jiraiya felt far more confident. Naruko still had her fussy moments, but he now understood how to care for her with patience. And so, their journey continued, not just of shinobi adventures, but of unexpected lessons in responsibility, family, and love. 3 years later. 3 years passed peacefully for the small group as they traveled across the 5 great nations. Naruko had grown from a lively infant into a curious toddler. While Jiraiya was not exactly a father figure, he was both a skilled ninja and a wise sage. With the help of Ma and Pa, he had begun teaching Naruko about the toads from the time she could walk and understand simple words. It came as little surprise to some when Naruko's first spoken words were connected to Jiraiya himself. Dash. Flashback. The toads were helping Jiraiya care for little Naruko, who was wobbling on her feet while Ma encouraged her to walk across a small hotel room. Jiraiya had just returned from meeting a contact in a quiet town nearby. The place was so small that even the well-traveled sage barely remembered its name. Still, he had managed to gather useful information regarding Orochimaru's movements, so the toads had looked after Naruko in his absence. That's it, little Naruko. Come to Ma. Ma called warmly. Naruko stopped, glanced toward Jiraiya, and opened her mouth as if to speak. Everyone leaned in expectantly. With great effort, Naruko tried, before finally blurting out, Uro-senin. All 3 adults froze, then toppled backward in surprise. Pa burst into hearty laughter while Ma shook a rolling pin at Jiraiya in mock frustration. Dash. End flashback. From then on, Naruko's earliest memories often included Jiraiya trying, usually unsuccessfully, to charm women during their travels. Naruko, however, discovered her own way of interrupting these antics. Dash. Flashback. Jiraiya was chatting with 2 cheerful young women in his room. Oh yes, you're perfect for my research projects. Just perfect, he said, grinning. Before the conversation could go further, the door creaked open. A small Naruko, holding her frog plush, peeked in. Uro-senin, I had a bad dream. Can I sleep here? She asked softly, her big blue eyes brimming with tears. The 2 women immediately rushed to her side. Oh, you poor thing. Come here, sweetheart. We'll take care of you, one said as they tucked Naruko gently between them. Then they turned to Jiraiya with scolding looks. How could you even think of doing research when you have a child in the next room? For shame. Jiraiya sighed and shuffled out of the room, muttering to himself as Naruko dozed off happily. Dash. End flashback. Naruko's unusual upbringing continued as she journeyed with Jiraiya and the elder toads. Though Jiraiya cared for her deeply, she often felt lonely, as she had never played with other children her age. Still, she learned quickly, and the toads were proud of her. Pa frequently explained the mysteries of nature energy, even though Naruko was only 3 years old. Everything around us carries life, Pa said patiently. You can feel the chakra inside your body, but the world holds an even greater energy. To sense it, one must be calm and still. Jiraiya and Ma exchanged knowing sighs. Naruko was too young to fully understand, but they admired her eagerness to listen. She had even signed the toad contract under their guidance, though her chakra was not yet strong enough to summon. Life on the road was all Naruko had ever known. They stayed in inns and wandered from place to place. Still, today was different. Today, she was finally returning to the village of her birth, Konoha. Jiraiya explained that the 3rd Hokage had summoned him back for an important mission connected to Orochimaru. Naruko's heart filled with excitement. She had heard countless stories from Jiraiya about Konoha's will of fire and the great shinobi who embodied it. Soon, she would see the place for herself. As they approached, however, a figure appeared in the road, blocking their way. Greetings, Hyashi. How have you been? Jiraiya called. The man wore elegant robes of white and soft gray, embroidered with clan markings. His expression was serious. Jiraiya, Hyashi replied evenly, his gaze steady. I had hoped you would have done what was right by now. Sensing tension, Ma and Pa gently guided Naruko away into the forest to distract her. Hyashi, Jiraiya said firmly, you know that what happened was not Naruko's fault. How can you suggest that? She carries a sealed spirit within her. We only just finished rebuilding after 3 years. The village is finally on the mend, and you propose bringing her here so that the sealed essence might be released again and set back our recovery? I cannot permit that, Jiraiya. If you lack the resolve to do what is necessary, I will act in its stead. Jiraiya, usually a buoyant and light-hearted man, had become quietly fond of Naruko despite her unconventional habits. In the blink of an eye he moved, one moment he was talking, the next he stood beside Hiashi, his posture firm and resolute. Let me be perfectly clear, Hiashi. You may govern your clan with strict discipline, but you do not control this young woman's destiny. The third Hokage has decreed she must not be harmed, and if any harm comes to her in my absence, you will answer to me and the sages of my Obakuzen. That child has committed no transgression deserving of your hostility. Remember, it is the sealed spirit within her that is the source of your concern, not the girl herself. Hiashi felt a bead of sweat at the nape of his neck. Many in the village occasionally forgot that beneath the jests and companions, the veteran had earned the title of Sannin for very good reason. He had not detected Jiraiya's presence until it was too late. Still, Hiashi was not easily intimidated, not even by one of Konoha's legendary figures. Keep in mind, Hiashi replied, if she departs from the path set for her, responsibility will rest with those who chose this course. He inclined his head, and Jiraiya relaxed his stance as Hiashi melted away in a swirl of smoke. Ma and Pa returned shortly after. Well, Jiraiya, spare us the theatrics, will you? Ma said with a teasing smile. Jiraiya wore an expression rarely seen by others, one of deep seriousness. It was a look that reminded anyone nearby just how much the elder shinobi had experienced. In that moment, it seemed as though the weight of past memories, both joyful and regretful, rested upon his shoulders, making him appear older and wiser than usual. Still, he managed a kind smile as he acknowledged the toad sages who had accompanied them. Ma and Pa bid Naruko a warm farewell, embracing her before returning to Mount Myobakuzen, leaving her with a cheerful wave. Naruko had not set eyes on the village of Konohagakure since the day of her birth. Now, as the great wooden gates rose before her, she could do nothing but gaze in wonder. The intricate symbols carved upon the entrance and the sight of the lively city beyond filled her heart with awe. It was an image she knew she would carry forever. Life bustled around her as she entered the streets, shinobi hurrying about, merchants calling out their goods, and children running between market stalls. Naruko had visited many places during her travels with Jiraiya, but this village felt different. She couldn't explain why, only that it stirred something warm inside her. My home, she thought, her eyes sparkling. A smile spread across her face, and laughter bubbled out of her as she spun around, eager to take everything in. She wanted to touch, explore, and marvel at every detail. For so long, she had heard Jiraiya's stories about this place, and now she was finally here. Her joy was so bright it seemed to shine in every step. Excited, Naruko ran ahead, tugging on Jiraiya's sleeve to point out little discoveries. A playful dog wearing a ninja scarf, a toy fox at a vendor's stand, and the colorful decorations hanging between buildings, all captured her imagination. Watching her energy made Jiraiya's heart lighter, proud that he had helped bring her to this moment of safety and happiness. Still, he found himself wishing she would slow down, if only for his sake. What Naruko did not notice, caught up in her wonder, were the hushed whispers and glances from some villagers as she passed. Jiraiya, however, noticed all too well, the nervous stares, the quiet murmurings. He sighed inwardly. I had hoped time would have softened their hearts. But it seems some wounds take longer to heal, he thought as they approached the towering building ahead. Come along, Naruko, Jiraiya called gently. We're expected by the third Hokage. You'll have plenty of time to explore afterward. Naruko skipped closer and asked with wide, curious eyes, what's the third Hokage like? Jiraiya smiled at her enthusiasm. He's wise and very powerful. People say he knows almost every technique there is. Her eyes grew even wider at that thought. Jiraiya then pointed to the mountain where the Hokage's faces were carved in stone. See those? The third one from the left, that's him. Naruko stared in wonder at the grand carvings, imagining her own face among them someday. She was so caught up in the thought that she nearly forgot to follow Jiraiya, rushing after him with a laugh. Dash! At the Hokage Tower. Inside the tower, Naruko waited in the reception hall, her eyes wandering over the framed portraits of past Hokage and great shinobi of the Leaf. She recognized many of them from Jiraiya's stories, but seeing their faces in person gave the tales new life. They protected this village with all they had, she thought proudly, her small fists clenched with determination. While Naruko explored with her eyes, watched carefully by the Hokage's assistants, Jiraiya stood before his teacher, the third Hokage, delivering his report. My contact say Orochimaru has been moving in secret, Jiraiya explained gravely. He's been gathering wandering shinobi from other villages. I don't know his goal yet, but it cannot be for anything harmless. He's also been asking questions about the Jinchuriki. The Hokage sat quietly, his fingers interlaced as he considered this information. The pipe that usually rested in his hand lay untouched on the desk. This confirms what our own scouts have heard, the Hokage replied slowly. Though I did not know about his interest in the Jinchuriki. Jiraiya, I will need you to investigate this closely. Orochimaru must not be allowed to gain too much influence. Whatever he is planning could threaten not only Konoha, but all the allied nations as well. It is our responsibility to remain vigilant. Jiraiya gave a solemn nod. And what about Naruko? I cannot take her with me on this mission, and I may be gone for some time. She will stay here in Konoha, the Hokage assured him. It is time she begins her training at the academy with the other children. I have already arranged for her to have a small apartment. She has learned much while traveling with you, enough to take care of herself in simple matters. Jiraiya hesitated. I don't doubt her ability, master. She is clever and full of potential. But I worry about how the village will treat her. I saw the way some people looked at her earlier. Their views. They haven't changed much. The Hokage's expression grew thoughtful, his eyes softening. Time will show them who Naruko truly is. Until then, we must give her every chance to shine. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konoha, known throughout the shinobi world as the Professor, regarded his student with a calm and steady gaze. Time had etched deeper lines into his face, and the weight of responsibility was clear in his expression. After a moment of reflection, he finally nodded, acknowledging his student's words. Many villagers interpreted my decision to place Naruko under your care as confirmation of their fears. They assumed I meant to keep her constantly watched, as though she were nothing more than the seal she carries. I had hoped that with time, their anxiety would fade, but I see now that it lingers still. Yet, Naruko must learn to face this reality. It is better for her to meet it now than later. The village cannot grow to understand her if she remains hidden. Spending time among her peers will give her the chance to form bonds with children her own age, young ones who have no preconceived notions about her. Only by showing them her true self can she earn the place she deserves. She is still young, but I believe she will prove herself worthy of her heritage. Iruka will be her instructor at the academy. My secretary will give you her new address, and you should leave without delay. Minato prepared for this carefully and set aside funds for Naruko's well-being. She will have what she needs, including a monthly allowance. Yes, sensei, Jiraiya replied respectfully. We'll depart immediately. I only wish Naruko's chakra system were strong enough for her to summon the toads, but she is still developing. Even so, her growth has been remarkable. I won't fail you, and I think you will be pleasantly surprised by her progress. With that, Jiraiya received his dismissal. He collected Naruko and the documents from the Hokage's secretary before accompanying her to the apartment that would now be her home. The space was modest but comfortable, a small bedroom, a living area with a kitchen corner, a desk, and a few simple furnishings. It was not grand, but it was a place Naruko could truly call her own. After stocking the cupboards with supplies, and plenty of ramen, which Naruko had instantly loved the moment she first tasted it, Jiraiya sat down with the young girl. Hey, Naruko, come here for a moment, he called gently. She bounded over, curious as ever. I've been given a mission, and I'll be away for a while. During that time, you'll stay here and begin at the academy tomorrow. Make sure you arrive on time, and I expect glowing reports from Iruka-sensei when I return. Yes, Seigi. Naruko chirped. No matter how many times Jiraiya tried, she never called him by his name. He had long since accepted Seigi as her affectionate nickname for him. Smiling faintly, he presented her with a small package. Naruko tore it open eagerly, revealing a bright green frog-shaped wallet. Her eyes lit up with joy, and she hugged him tightly. For a child who had so few belongings of her own, the gift meant the world. Jiraiya returned the embrace, silently realizing how much he would miss her while away. The next morning, Jiraiya departed at dawn, quietly ruffling Naruko's hair as she slept. When she awoke, the apartment was silent, and though the emptiness felt unusual, she quickly adjusted. Excited for her first day, she prepared ramen for breakfast, dressed in her new outfit, black cargo pants, a white shirt, and an orange jacket edged in black flames, and packed her school supplies. Naruko ran most of the way to the academy, her boundless energy carrying her swiftly through the streets. Arriving early, she pushed open the classroom door and was greeted warmly by Iruka. "Ah, you must be Naruko Uzumaki," Iruka said with a smile. "Welcome. You may sit anywhere you like." Naruko scanned the room, aware of curious glances from the other students. Her bright blue eyes and spiky golden hair made her stand out at once. Choosing a seat, she settled beside a boy with dark eyes and an air of quiet detachment. "Hi, I'm Naruko Uzumaki," she said cheerfully. "Mind if I sit here?" "Go ahead," the boy replied. "I'm Sasuke Uchiha. You're the new student, right? At least sitting here will keep you away from all the girls staring at me." "Is that a bad thing?" Naruko asked, tilting her head in puzzlement. Sasuke gave her a strange look, but before he could answer, Iruka began the lesson. Today's topic was the chakra system, the foundation of all shinobi arts. Every person has a network of chakra points, Iruka explained, pointing to a diagram. By learning to control the flow of chakra, one can enhance strength, endurance, and resilience, or perform jutsu both simple and advanced. Some families possess special abilities that allow them to see chakra directly, such as the Uchiha Sharingan or the Hyuga's Byakugan. For most of us, though, it takes training and practice to sense and control chakra properly. As Iruka spoke, Naruko leaned forward, fascinated. Though Jiraiya had often spoken of chakra in terms of nature's energy, this explanation filled in many gaps in her understanding. Across the room, a quiet girl with pale skin and soft lilac eyes stole glances at Naruko. Her dark hair, touched with a purple hue, framed her face delicately. Though she focused on the lesson, something about Naruko's lively presence drew her attention again and again. The lesson continued as the academy students learned grammar, mathematics, history, and other subjects that every young shinobi in training would need to succeed in life. Eventually, the school bell rang for lunch, and the class was dismissed to go outside. Their teacher reminded them to be prepared for a quiz the following day, as well as for a practical lesson in chakra usage. Sasuke had explained to Naruko that this meant they would soon begin practicing how to apply chakra in real situations. Naruko eagerly followed her classmates outside and joined in their play. It was the first time she had ever truly played with other children her age, and to her delight, she realized how much fun it could be. She swung high on the swings, climbed across the ninja bars, and laughed as she joined a game of tag. For Naruko, the experience was magical. She had never known happiness like this before. The playground echoed with cheerful laughter until parents began to arrive to collect their children. At first, Naruko thought nothing of it. But as soon as some parents noticed their children playing with her, they quickly called them over. Naruko noticed their stern expressions and the way they hurried away while whispering to one another. The words floated in the air, harsh and confusing to her young ears. Why would they allow her into the academy? She's dangerous. Our children must stay away. What is the Hokage thinking? The voices trailed off as they walked away, but the sting of those words lingered. Naruko sat down on the grass, her small hands resting on her knees, and tried to make sense of what had happened. She wondered if she had broken a rule or made some mistake without realizing it. Why were people so upset with her? She didn't know what she had done wrong. Eventually, she was the last one left on the playground. With a sigh, Naruko stood and began the walk back to her apartment. Along the way, she noticed the same thing she had earlier tried to ignore, villagers glaring at her, pointing, and whispering as she passed. She lowered her head and hugged her arms around herself, feeling a loneliness she could not put into words. Her eyes welled with tears as she thought about her guardian, Jiraiya, whom she missed dearly. She wished he were there with his cheerful voice, even if he brought along his strange research assistants. At least then, she wouldn't feel so alone. By the time she reached her apartment, Naruko was exhausted. She had gotten lost more than once on the way back, and when she had tried asking for directions, no one was willing to help. Instead, they told her to leave, which left her even more confused and hurt. That night, she sat on her bed and pressed her face into her pillow, her quiet sobs filling the otherwise silent room. Each unkind look, each whispered comment, and each cold shoulder returned to her memory, echoing in her heart. She wished her parents could be there. She wished her guardian could walk through the door and tell her everything would be okay. But in the stillness of her empty apartment, Naruko did the only thing a child her age could. She cried, wishing for comfort she had never truly known. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Anime Dreams for more exciting content. Your support keeps this journey alive, and the best is yet to come. Thank you for being part of this community. Warm regards. Anime Dreams.